Your procrastination isn't a character flaw. It's something far more dangerous, a time illusion. Every time you tell yourself, "I'll do it later," your brain is making a quiet assumption that tomorrow belongs to you. The gym next week, the business when things calm down, the apology when you feel ready, the book when you finally have time, that conversation with your father before it's too late. You know exactly what you need to do. You've researched it, planned it, written it down. But when the moment comes to act, you push it forward. Tomorrow, next Monday, when things settle down, and the days become weeks, the weeks become months, the months become years, and you remain exactly where you are. There's a 400-year-old Japanese principle called Ichigo Ichi. It means one time, one meeting, never again. Tea masters in 16th century Japan used this concept during ceremonies to remind participants of a brutal truth. This exact moment would never exist again. Even if you perform the same ceremony tomorrow with the same people in the same room, it wouldn't be the same moment. That specific instant would be dead forever. Now, apply this to your life. That workout you skipped today, you'll never get another chance at it. That project you postponed, that version of you, with that energy, in that moment, gone. That phone call you delayed, that opportunity is already dying. The worst part, your brain tricks you every single day into believing there's always tomorrow. But neuroscience reveals something darker. The more you postpone, the stronger your procrastination circuits become. You're literally training your brain to delay. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of a young man named Hiroshi. He lived in 1620s Kyoto. He worked under one of Japan's most respected tea masters. He was talented, intelligent, and full of potential. But Hiroshi spent years of his life trapped in an illusion called, "I'll start tomorrow." Until one day, something happened that shattered that illusion forever. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment below with one thing you've been putting off for weeks or months. A project, a workout, a study session, a difficult conversation, something you know you need to do, but keep delaying. I read every comment, and I know many of you are exactly where Hiroshi was. This video might be the moment that changes everything. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get to the story. Chapter 1. The man who always prepared, Hiroshi, was 23 years old and living in a cycle of beautiful preparation. He wasn't a failure. In fact, he was observant, skilled, and deeply ambitious. Everyone in the tea house said, "This apprentice will become a master one day." But Hiroshi wasn't becoming anything, because he lived in the future. He worked in a small tea house in Kyoto, not because he had mastered the craft, but because he was still learning, still preparing for the moment when he would truly begin. He had been an apprentice for 3 years. He understood the philosophy. He had memorized the movements. He had studied the master's techniques. But his own practice? Postponed, because he would really start when he felt more confident. Hiroshi also wanted to perfect his calligraphy. He had purchased the finest brushes, the best ink, and premium paper. He had laid everything out on his desk with intention. He practiced once, made a few imperfect strokes, and never touched it again. Because when his tea studies calmed down, he would dedicate himself properly. And there was more. Hiroshi wanted to deepen his meditation practice. He had heard the teachings, understood the principles, and even found the perfect quiet space in the garden. He sat once. His mind wandered. He told himself he'd try again when he had more mental clarity. He never returned. On top of all that, Hiroshi had an aging mentor, a tea master who had spent decades perfecting his craft. A quiet, patient man who still made time to teach despite his failing health. The master would invite Hiroshi to special sessions. "Come tomorrow morning. I'll show you the technique that took me 20 years to understand. Master, I have some things to prepare. Perhaps next week?" But next week never came, because there was always something easier to do than face the discomfort of imperfection. Hiroshi's life was governed by a pattern. Sunday evening, he made promises. Monday, "I'll wake before dawn. I'll practice the tea ceremony with full attention. I'll work on my calligraphy after dinner. I'll meditate before bed. This week will be different." He even laid out his practice materials the night before. Monday morning came. Hiroshi woke, but not early. He told himself he needed rest to practice properly later. He arrived at the tea house and moved through his duties on autopilot. He prepared tea for customers, but his mind was elsewhere, thinking about what he would do when he finally started taking things seriously. At the end of each day, he would return to his room. He would look at his calligraphy brushes. He would glance at his meditation space. He would think about practicing. And then he would lie down, just to rest for a moment before beginning. Those moments would turn into hours. He'd fall asleep telling himself, tomorrow. But among the regular customers at the tea house, there was one man Hiroshi barely noticed. An elderly merchant who had been visiting for over a decade. Kind, quiet, always grateful for his tea. Hiroshi served him without much thought, already thinking about the next task, the next customer, the next day when he would finally become the person he was meant to be. The merchant would smile, bow, and leave. And Hiroshi would forget him immediately. Because in Hiroshi's mind, there would always be another chance to be present, another day to truly pay attention, another opportunity to make that moment matter. He was wrong. Chapter 2. When Time Proves You Wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Hiroshi was cleaning tea bowls in the back room when the master called him over. The old merchant, the regular customer who had visited every week for over a decade, had died suddenly in his sleep. Hiroshi stopped. When? He asked. 2 days ago, the master replied quietly. The tea you served him on Saturday was his last. Hiroshi felt something shift inside his chest. Not sadness, exactly. He barely knew the man. It was something worse. Realization. He had served that tea on autopilot. He had bowed without eye contact. He had poured without presence. He had been thinking about something else entirely. Probably about what he would do later that evening when he finally started practicing. That moment, the merchant's final tea, his final visit to a place he had loved for years, had been treated like a rehearsal, and there would never be another take. The master placed a hand on Hiroshi's shoulder. That meeting, he said, will never happen again. Not with him, not with that version of you, not in that room on that particular afternoon with that specific light coming through the window. Hiroshi nodded, but he couldn't speak, because he was beginning to understand what never again actually meant. Here's what neuroscience reveals about finality. The human brain is terrible at processing it. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning and decision-making, operates on pattern recognition. It predicts the future based on past repetition. You've seen 1,000 sunrises, so your brain assumes there will be 1,000 more. You've had 100 conversations with your father, so it assumes there will be another 100. You've skipped the gym 90 times, so it believes you can skip it again tomorrow without consequence. This is called the availability heuristic. The brain's tendency to assume that what has happened before will happen again. It's an efficient system for survival, but it's a catastrophic system for living, because the brain doesn't emotionally register last until after it has already happened. The last time you hugged your grandmother before she died, you didn't know it was the last time. The last game you played as a child before you grew too old for pretend, you didn't know. The last season your body could run without pain, you didn't know. You only realized these moments were final in retrospect. And by then, they're gone. Hiroshi stood in that tea house, holding a bowl the merchant would never drink from again. And for the first time in his life, he felt the weight of never. Not as poetry, as violence. The master handed Hiroshi the scroll again. Ichigo Ichie. This is not philosophy, the master said. It's a warning. Hiroshi unrolled it slowly. One time, one meeting. Never again. He had read these words before. He had nodded politely. He had even found them beautiful, but he hadn't believed them. Not really, because belief requires feeling. And his brain had spent 23 years convincing him that moments repeat endlessly. Now he understood. Ichigo Ichi wasn't about appreciating beauty. It was about confronting mortality. Not just the mortality of people, but the mortality of moments themselves. Every second you live is dying as you experience it. That workout you skipped? Dead. That conversation you postponed? Dead. That apology you delayed? Dead. That project you said you'd start next week? The version of you that exists right now, with this energy, this clarity, this specific combination of circumstances, dead by next week. You will be different. The opportunity will be different. The moment will be gone. Ichigo Ichie doesn't ask you to be motivated. It asks you to acknowledge reality. This moment is the only version of itself that will ever exist. I said once you truly feel that, procrastination stops making sense. Because you don't casually destroy something that only exists once, eh? Think about your own life for a moment. How many workouts have you skipped, telling yourself you'd make up for it later? Each one is gone. You will never get that specific version of your body, in that exact state of health, back again. How many phone calls have you avoided, promising yourself you'd reach out next week? Each delay is a choice to let that moment die unrealized. How many projects have you postponed until the right time? That version of you, the one sitting here right now with this idea, this vision, this spark of inspiration, will not exist next month. You will be older, more tired, more distracted, more convinced that there's still time. But there isn't. The person you could have called might not answer. The body you could have trained might be injured. The opportunity you could have seized might be gone. And you will look back, just like Hiroshi did, and realize you treated finite moments like infinite rehearsals. Hiroshi stood in that tea house, staring at the empty cushion where the merchant used to sit, and made a decision, not to be more disciplined, not to try harder, but to stop lying to himself about time. Tomorrow wasn't real. Next week was a fantasy. When things calmed down, was a fairy tale his brain told him to avoid discomfort. The only thing that existed was this room, this breath, this moment. And it was already dying. So he did something small. He picked up a tea bowl, and he washed it as if it were the last tea bowl he would ever wash, not with more effort. With more presence, because time doesn't repeat. It erases. And once you see that clearly, procrastination becomes impossible, because you finally understand you're not postponing tasks. You're killing moments that will never come back. Chapter 3. Why Willpower Never Works. Hiroshi didn't wake up the next morning with superhuman discipline. He didn't suddenly develop iron willpower or unshakable motivation. He didn't create a new productivity system or set ambitious goals. He simply opened his eyes and thought, "This morning will never exist again." That single thought changed everything. Not because it motivated him, because it made delay feel impossible. When he walked to the tea house that day, he didn't walk faster or with more determination. He just walked fully. He felt his feet against the ground. But he noticed the early light cutting through the buildings. He heard the sounds of Kyoto waking up around him. Not because these things were beautiful or inspirational, but because they were happening right now. And right now was the only version of time that actually existed. When he prepared tea for the first customer of the day, he didn't try to be perfect. He just poured completely. His hands steady, his attention undivided, his mind exactly where his body was. And something strange happened. Procrastination didn't show up. It couldn't. Because procrastination requires a future to push tasks into. And Hiroshi had stopped believing in the future as a storage space for unlived life. Here's what neuroscience reveals about presence and action. Your brain doesn't run on motivation. It runs on dopamine. Dopamine isn't the reward chemical. It's the anticipation chemical. It spikes not when you achieve something, but when your brain perceives something as urgent and valuable. When you set a goal for next month, your brain gets a tiny dopamine hit from the fantasy of achievement. But then it waits, because the goal lives in the future, and the future never feels urgent. Your prefrontal cortex calculates, "I have 30 days to do this. I can start tomorrow." And dopamine flatlines. No urgency means no action. But when your brain perceives something as finite, as unrepeatable, everything changes. Scarcity triggers a completely different neural pathway. Your amygdala registers threat. This opportunity is dying. Your dopamine system spikes. Act now or lose it forever. Your motor cortex activates. movement becomes inevitable. This is why people don't procrastinate during emergencies. When your house is on fire, you don't think, "I'll evacuate next week." The moment feels finite, so action becomes automatic. Ichigo Ichi does the same thing to ordinary moments. It turns someday into right now or never, and your brain stops negotiating. Hiroshi used to set goals constantly. I will become a tea master. I will perfect my technique. I will earn my mentor's respect. These goals lived in the future, abstract, distant, easy to postpone. So his brain treated them like suggestions, not urgencies. But after the merchant's death, Hiroshi stopped thinking about becoming a master. He started thinking about this tea ceremony, this customer, this single pour, not as practice for some future achievement, as the only version of this moment that would ever exist. And his actions changed immediately, not because he had more discipline, but because his brain finally registered what was at stake. Every ignored moment was a permanent loss. Every delay was a choice to let something irreplaceable die. You can't motivate yourself out of that realization. You can only act. This is why goals fail so spectacularly. Goals are future-focused. They ask, what do you want to become? Ichigo Ichi is present-focused. It asks, what are you destroying right now by waiting? When you say, I want to lose 20 pounds, your brain hears, someday. When you say, this workout will never exist again, your brain hears, now. When you say, I'll write my book this year, your brain files it under optional. When you say, this hour of writing is dying right now, your brain registers urgency. The difference isn't semantic, it's neurological. Future-oriented goals trigger planning circuits, slow, analytical, easy to override. Present-oriented finality triggers survival circuits, fast, emotional, nearly impossible to ignore. Hiroshi stopped setting goals for his tea practice. He simply treated each ceremony as if it were the last tea he would ever prepare. Not dramatically, just honestly. And his skill improved faster than it had in 3 years of trying. Because presence doesn't require effort. It requires honesty about time. Here's the brutal truth most productivity advice won't tell you. You don't delay things because you lack willpower. You delay things because your brain genuinely believes they're repeatable. That conversation with your father? Your brain assumes there will be 50 more. That business idea? Yes, your brain thinks you'll have time next year. That hour at the gym? Your brain is convinced tomorrow is guaranteed. And as long as your brain believes moments repeat endlessly, procrastination will feel rational. Why do something hard now when you can do it later? But once your brain understands that later is a different moment with a different you in different circumstances, and that this specific version is dying right now, procrastination stops making sense. You don't need more motivation. You need to stop being lied to about time. Hiroshi spent 3 years trying to force himself to practice through discipline. He failed constantly. Then he spent 1 week treating each moment as unrepeatable, and procrastination vanished. Not because he became stronger, because he became honest. The workout you're delaying isn't waiting for you. It's disappearing. The project you're postponing isn't paused. It's dying. The person you keep meaning to call isn't standing still in time. They're aging, changing, moving further away from the version of them that exists right now. And you're not lazy for recognizing this. You're time blind. Your brain has been trained by evolution to assume stability, repetition, and endless tomorrows. But tomorrows don't exist. They never arrive. By the time tomorrow comes, it's called today. And you're still waiting. Hiroshi stopped waiting. Not because he found motivation, but because he finally saw what waiting actually cost. Every postponed moment was gone forever. And once you see that clearly, procrastination isn't a habit you break. It's a lie you stop believing. Because you don't delay what you know is unrepeatable. You do it now, or you watch it die. Chapter 4. Turning presence into daily action. Hiroshi's transformation didn't look like a transformation. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic life overhauls, no new schedules plastered on his wall. He simply started treating ordinary moments as if they mattered, because they did. When he swept the tea house floor each morning, He swept it fully, not thinking about the ceremony later, not rehearsing conversations in his head, just sweeping. Each stroke deliberate, each section complete. This floor, this broom, this moment. Never again. When he studied the tea master's writings in the evening, he didn't skim while planning what he'd read tomorrow. He read each passage as if these were the last words he'd ever study. His attention sharpened. His comprehension deepened, not because he was trying harder, but because he had stopped treating the moment like a warm-up for some future session that would never come. When customers arrived, he bowed to each one as if this were their final meeting. Not morbidly, honestly. Because it might be. And even if they returned tomorrow, tomorrow's version of this moment would be different. Different light, different mood, different version of both people. This meeting was dying as it happened, so he gave it his full attention. Something shifted in how Hiroshi saw himself. For 3 years, he had thought of himself as someone who would become a tea master, future-focused, potential-based, always one step away from actually beginning. His identity lived in one day. One day, I'll be skilled. One day, I'll be focused. One day, I'll be present. But after the merchant's death, that identity collapsed. He stopped being the person who would start tomorrow. He became the person who was here now, not as an aspiration, as a fact. When he poured tea, he wasn't practicing for some future mastery. He was pouring tea right now, and this pour was the only one that existed. When he cleaned bowls, he wasn't preparing to eventually clean them well. He was cleaning them completely, because this moment was all there was. The shift was subtle but total, from I will become to I am doing, from future identity to present action, and his brain rewired itself accordingly. Neuroscience calls this identity-based habit formation, but the mechanism is simpler than it sounds. Your brain builds neural pathways through repetition. Every time you perform an action, neurons fire in a specific sequence. The more you repeat that sequence, the stronger the pathway becomes. Eventually, the action becomes automatic, a habit. But here's what most habit advice gets wrong. You can't build a pathway to the future. You can only build pathways in the present. When you tell yourself, I'm the kind of person who works out, but then skip the gym, your brain doesn't encode the identity. It encodes the skip. The neural pathway strengthens around avoidance, not action. But when you show up and train, even for 10 minutes, your brain registers. This person acts. Not will act, acts. The pathway forms around presence, not promise. Hiroshi stopped promising himself he'd practice tomorrow. He practiced now. 5 minutes of focused whisking. One complete tea ceremony, start to finish. A single page of calligraphy with full attention. Not because these small actions would accumulate into future mastery, but because they were the only actions that actually existed, and his brain began to automate presence. After 2 weeks, sitting down to practice stopped requiring negotiation. His body simply moved toward the action, not from discipline, from repetition. He had trained his neural pathways to associate each moment with complete engagement, and his brain defaulted to that pattern. Presence became his identity. Not someday. Right now. You can apply this same principle to every area of your life. At work, stop thinking about the career you'll build over the next 5 years. Start treating this email, this meeting, this task as the only work that exists, not as a stepping stone to future success, as the actual substance of your professional life happening right now. Or your career isn't built someday. It's built in this moment or not at all. In health, stop fixating on the body you'll have in 6 months. Start recognizing that this workout, this single session, is your only chance to move this version of your body. Tomorrow, your cells will be different. Your energy will be different. This exact opportunity is gone after today. You're not training for the future. You're inhabiting the only body you'll ever have access to, the one that exists now. In relationships, stop waiting for the perfect moment to have that difficult conversation. Stop assuming your parents will always be there for future visits. Stop treating your partner like a permanent fixture you can engage with later. This dinner is the only version of this dinner. That this phone call is the only chance to speak to this version of the person you love. This apology can only happen now. Later is a different moment with different people in different emotional states. Presence isn't romantic, it's realistic. Hiroshi's mentor began to notice the change, not because Hiroshi's technique had suddenly become flawless, but because something in his quality of attention had shifted. When the master demonstrated a movement, Hiroshi watched as if he'd never get another demonstration. He didn't watch to remember for later. He watched to absorb now. When the master spoke, Hiroshi listened as if these were the last words he'd hear. Not dramatically, completely. The master didn't praise him. He simply gave him more responsibility. Because presence is its own credential. Your life isn't being built in your goals, your plans, or your intentions. It's being built right now, in how you respond to this email, in whether you take that walk or skip it, in whether you call that person or wait another week, in whether you start that project or tell yourself there's still time. Every moment you postpone is a brick you're refusing to lay, and you can't build a life out of bricks you never place. Hiroshi stopped waiting for the right time to become a master. He started being present in each task, and mastery built itself. Not someday. Now, one unrepeatable moment at a time. Chapter 5. The Only Day That Exists. 7 years later, Hiroshi became a tea master, not because he was the most talented apprentice, not because he worked longer hours than everyone else, not because he was naturally disciplined or gifted with focus. He became a master because he stopped treating moments like rehearsals. While other apprentices practiced for someday, Hiroshi engaged with today. While others prepared for future mastery, Hiroshi was present in each pore, each bow, each breath. The difference wasn't effort. It was honesty about time. When the official ceremony came, when senior masters gathered to evaluate his skill, Hiroshi didn't perform differently than he had performed every single day for years. He simply prepared tea, fully, completely, as if this ceremony were the only one that would ever exist. Because in a way, it was. This room, these masters, this version of himself. Never again. He passed not because he rose to the occasion, but because he had been present for thousands of small occasions that no one else was watching. And presence, compounded over time, now becomes mastery. Now let's talk about you. Not the version of you that exists in your plans. Not the person you'll become when things calm down. The you that's reading these words right now. How much time do you think you have? With your parents? Let's say they're 65. If you're lucky, you might have 20 more years with them. That sounds like a lot. But how often do you actually see them? Once a month? That's 240 visits left. 240 conversations. 240 chances to ask the questions you keep postponing. And that's if everything goes perfectly, if health holds, if life doesn't intervene. Every skipped call is one fewer conversation. Every postponed visit is one fewer memory. And your brain keeps telling you there's always next month. But next month, they'll be older, more tired. Further from the version of them that exists right now. This version of your parents is dying. Today. With your body, you're not getting younger. That knee that doesn't hurt yet? It will. That energy you take for granted, it's depleting. That metabolism you ignore, it's slowing. Every workout you skip isn't just a missed session. It's a permanent loss of this version of your physical self. You will never be this young again. You will never have this exact capacity for recovery, for strength, for health. The body you could train today will be gone tomorrow, slightly weaker, slightly older, slightly closer to the point where movement becomes difficult instead of difficult but possible. This moment is your peak availability to yourself, and you're waiting for motivation with your opportunities. That business idea isn't waiting patiently in some suspended state. The market is moving. Competitors are launching. The window is narrowing. That relationship you've been neglecting isn't frozen in time. The other person is growing, changing, reconsidering. That skill you keep meaning to learn isn't getting easier. Your cognitive plasticity is declining. Your free time is shrinking. Your competing responsibilities are multiplying. Opportunities don't wait. They expire. And every day you tell yourself, later, you're not postponing action. You're choosing expiration. Here's the truth you've been avoiding. You are not waiting for motivation. You are not waiting for the perfect moment. You are not waiting for things to calm down. You are waiting because your brain has convinced you that you have time, but you don't. Time isn't a resource you possess. It's a context you exist within, and it's dissolving around you constantly. Your father is aging right now. Your body is degrading right now. Your opportunity is closing right now. Your moment is dying right now, and you're still planning to start next week. Hiroshi lived this delusion for 3 years. He believed tomorrow would always come. He believed there would always be another chance. He believed moments were infinite. Then he watched a regular customer die, and the delusion shattered. Not because death is poetic, but because death is final. And finality reveals what presence actually costs. Everything you didn't do when you had the chance. You don't need a death to see this clearly. You just need to stop lying to yourself about repetition. So here's what happens next. You have 2 choices. You can close this video and return to your normal pattern. Tell yourself you'll implement this tomorrow. Add practice Ichigo Ichie to your list of things you'll do when you have more time. Treat this moment like every other moment, as if it's repeatable, as if there will be another chance, as if time is on your side. Your brain will feel comfortable with this choice, because your brain is designed to delay discomfort. Or you can do something different, right now. Not something massive, not a complete life overhaul, just one small action that you've been postponing. Send that text you've been drafting in your head for weeks. Do 10 push-ups instead of planning the workout you'll start Monday. Open that project file you've been avoiding and work for 15 minutes. Call that person you keep meaning to reach out to. Write 1 paragraph of that book. Apply to 1 opportunity. Have 1 honest conversation. Something small, something real, something that can only happen in this moment. Because this moment is the only version of itself that will ever exist. Not because it will change your life instantly, but because it will train your brain to recognize the truth. Later is a lie. Hiroshi didn't become a master because of 1 dramatic decision. He became a master because he made 1 small choice, to be present, and then made it again the next day, and the next, and the next, until presence wasn't something he did. It was who he was. You can do the same, not someday, today, because today is the only day that exists. Tomorrow is a word, not a place. Next week is a concept, not a guarantee. When things calm down is a fantasy your brain invented to protect you from discomfort. But discomfort is the price of living fully, and presence is the only way to pay it. 400 years ago, Japanese tea masters understood something that most people still don't. Moments don't wait. They don't pause. They don't repeat. They arrive, exist briefly, and die. And the only question that matters is, were you there when they happened? Or were you planning to show up later? Hiroshi learned this the hard way. You don't have to. You just have to make 1 choice, right now. Not a perfect choice, just a present one. Pick 1 thing you've been delaying, 1 call, 1 task, 1 conversation, 1 action, and do it today. Not because you feel motivated, not because the conditions are perfect, but because this version of today will never exist again. This opportunity is dying. This moment is dissolving. This chance is closing. And once it's gone forever. Ichigo Ichi. 1 time. 1 meeting. Never again. Not as poetry. As reality. Your life isn't being built someday. It's being built now. Or it's not being built at all. The choice has always been yours. The moment has always been now. What are you going to do with it?